All right, so this is ideology week, right? And so now we're in day 3. So far we've talked about kings, we've talked about fascism. Now we're over to socialism. And for socialism, I'm going to use the definition that relates to Marxism and that kind of stuff because I'm sure in a future video I'm going to talk about how socialism's used by different people to mean different things. Hitler calls himself a socialist, but he's a fascist, so what is he? And just skip all that. I'm talking about specifically Marxism type socialism, right? So, the theme for this week is fear driving ideologies. And the irony of what fears push you towards are exactly what takes away the thing that you're afraid of losing. That because you were afraid and you were driven by fear, you lost the very thing that you wanted. And socialism's no different. We know this. It's a fact that a lot of socialist countries, you think of the Soviet Union, you think of Communist China, you even think of Venezuela more recently. They have issues with food. They have issues with scarcity. But what was the fear that drove them to follow this ideology? Well, actually, scarcity. To quote Marx, from each according to his ability, to each according to his means. The issue with that is, if you are worried about people's needs, then that's what they're optimizing for. And that shows where the fear lies. The fear lies in scarcity. And fear of scarcity is what creates scarcity. Think about any time something bad happens in the world. There's a hurricane, a pandemic, whatever. People are afraid of scarcity. They say, something bad is about to happen. Let me go to the grocery store and stock up. And when everyone stocks up at the same time, what do they create? Scarcity. And because they're afraid of scarcity, they create scarcity. Now that is this concept on a small individual level. Socialism takes it to a much bigger level. You see, the socialist governments that ended up being not as bad were the ones that learned you need to have a black market. Because as much as they don't like markets, markets are efficient for getting people what they want. You can't centrally plan that nearly as easily. And so you have places like North Korea that completely outlaw currency, but at the same time they have rich people who have a lot of stuff and poor people who don't have a lot of stuff. And there's markets where, you buy and sell and trade stuff, and the government just kind of like, well, I'm not looking. It's bad though. I'm not just not paying attention. And that's why they're alive. That's why, even though we know that they've had famines and starvations, they're still around. Because they were willing to look the other way. Where other places, Venezuela, for example, weren't willing to look the other way. And this is the thing. When you feel secure, when you feel perfectly safe and provided for, you did your work. And now you can relax. This is what retirement is all about. People retire because they say, you know what? I put in my hours. I did the work. I contributed to society. Now it's time to rest. Now it's time to relax and enjoy the fruits of my labor. Socialism kind of works in the opposite way. No one is allowed to enjoy the fruits of their labor. So that way everyone can enjoy the fruits of everyone's labor. Which means it's a race to the bottom. You just relax. Let everyone carry you. Just dead weight. And they will. Because they have to. Because it's mandated by the government. You don't get a choice. The productive people have to carry your lazy butt around. And they don't get a say. And so, that is what leads to scarcity. It's because when you feel like you have abundance, then you're not worried about scarcity. And this is exactly the lesson to learn here. It's not about, oh, socialism's so bad. There's some good things about it too. We're not going to go into those right now because, hey, that's a different video. Come back, right? No, but what we're learning right now is about fear. And this fear is actually a good thing. You should be afraid of scarcity. If you don't have enough, you could die. Scarcity and the fear of scarcity are natural. You should be afraid of not having enough, of not being able to eat, of not being able to have a place to live, of not being able to retire, of getting too old and having to still work, but your body's breaking down and you don't have enough and you're afraid. You should be. Good. It is a reasonable thing to be afraid of. That is a horrible fate. To starve, to have your body fail on you and have nothing left to give, nothing left to provide. That is a valid fear, and you should be afraid. But when you try to remove the fear, to take it away, you lose all of your motivation to fix the underlying problem. And that is precisely what socialism is teaching us today. With fascism, we saw that fear can make you do terrible things. Same with socialism, absolutely. But the difference is, with socialism, that's actually an achievable feat. To make you feel like there's no scarcity. If you're in a room with wealth and riches and tons of food and safety and all this stuff, and you're like, oh man, this is so good. There's so much abundance. You are easy to trick in terms of scarcity. You're easy to say, oh, there's abundance. There's no scarcity. And the perfect example is North Korea once again. Whenever they have some American come to North Korea, They don't show them the slums, the poverty, the famine. No, no, no. They show all of the big-bellied North Koreans, or they're like, oh ho ho, look at how great we're doing. Look at, oh, these stores are just full of stuff. We have so much food and so much technology. We are so wonderful and great. Because if you are afraid of scarcity and what you're optimizing for is not production, but rather to avoid feeling afraid, then that's the perfect solution. It is much easier to take a whole bunch of food and put it on some shelves. So that way you can say, look at how much food we have. But it's much harder to actually grow and produce that food so that you can actually eat. And this is the major issue with socialism. Is it's a fraud, it's a sham. It's a show. It's a play. Oftentimes, what the people are really asking for from socialist leaders is not actually solving their problems, but to make them feel like the problems are being solved. This is why when you see homeless people on the street, you're like, oh, I feel so bad for them. It's so hard to be in the situation that they're in. That's so difficult. And what does your government do? You're not allowed to be here. Just moves them away, hides them. And then you come back to the street corner and you say, no beggars this time. I think we're doing well as a society. I think we're making it. I think we're doing bit by bit. We're doing better. We're making a difference. That is what socialism does. And it's not unique to socialism. I just gave you an example where a socialist country doesn't do it. Like, it does the same thing, I mean. And this is the thing. This is not to pick on any ideology individually. I'll pick on them individually later. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying here is that these are common strains across all ideologies. You are afraid of something. And so that's exactly what happens. Because when you are dealing with the fear, you're not dealing with the problem. When all you say is, I am so afraid of people being homeless, and the idea that maybe my family could be homeless one day. Oh, that would be awful. And the solution is, just move the homeless people. You're not allowed to live here. Get the police, scare them away, get them out of here. And then that way, I haven't seen a homeless person in a whole year. Must not be that bad. Yeah. And you feel better. And the anxiety goes away. And you feel calm. And the fear is gone. But there's just as many homeless people. There's just as many starving people. There's just as many problems. The issue is, now you don't even see them. Now you don't even know to be afraid. That you could be sitting in a socialist country and say, things are great. I'm in Venezuela. We are at the peak of civilization. We have so much wealth in such a small amount of time. We are doing fantastic. Everything is great. And then all of a sudden, it switches. And now you're starving. Because the mirage, the illusion is gone. And that is the real problem, is the lie. The lie to appease your fear is what will destroy you. Because if you just allowed yourself to be afraid, you just allowed yourself to see the hard truths, the bad stuff in the world, then you would be able to fix them. And when you fix them and make them better, you can feel better about yourself. about the world. But as long as you avoid them, it's just a false sense of security. It's a false sense of abundance. And that makes you that lazy person who says, oh, there's other people that'll take care of it. Obviously, they're managing. I mean, if they weren't managing and they couldn't do it and they needed my help, they'd probably ask. And that's what fear is for. Fear is a purpose. It's not just bad. Because when you're afraid, that's a call to action. And that is something that the world needs. Action. The world needs to fix the issues in it. And you need to be a part of that.